However, along that route, we can actually do one better than this, which is, I would say, the most recent way and my preferred way of writing this. However, it's depending on a stage 2 proposal, right? So, for those of you that are not familiar with how JavaScript is standardized, things can be staged. When we add a new feature to JavaScript, it can be stage 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. If something is stage 0, it's like a strawman proposal. There's like a very low chance actually that it's going to make it in the language. Stage 1, you're getting a better chance. Once you're stage 2, you're probably going to make it. Stage 3 is almost certainly going to make it, and stage 4 has made it, right? Once things are in stage 4, they're ready to go into the language. So I'm going to show you right now a stage 2 proposal that, as far as anyone I've ever talked to on TC39, the body that standardizes JavaScript, is definitely going to make it. In other words, I feel comfortable writing this, and if this ever gets, if this doesn't make it, I guarantee you, not only are you going to be screwed, but we're all going to be screwed, right? In other words, there's going to be a way forward for us. So again, there's some level of danger to this. I'm just going to throw that out there, like be aware of that. But we're going to make this a tiny bit easier for ourselves. So the first thing that we got to do is I want you to go to your Babel RC, because we need to add an additional plugin here. So there we go. Go and add another thing called plugins. So we're going to include just one additional plugin here. And this plugin is going to be Babel-plugin-transform-class-properties. So this is going to add just the one ability for us to add class properties onto our ES6 classes. Okay, so now come back to search.jsx. Instead of having handle search term change like this, what we're going to do is we're going to say handle search term change equals arrow function like that. Right? My lint is yelling, but I don't think that's actually correct. I think it should work. Maybe. Nope, parsing error. It looks like it's still working. It looks like it's just my linter failing for the moment. So I'll have to figure out later why are you also seeing the same error? So I wonder if that's just something with ESLint for me to tell that it needs to understand better JavaScript. Well, in any case, it is actually, it is working. So let's just press forward, and so come back here to search. There's actually something else we can do here to also simplify this. We can actually get rid of the constructor altogether, and we can say state equals search term colon like that, and then we can just drop the whole constructor. That's super weird. This wasn't failing my linter earlier. And Prettier understands it. And again, you can come back here, and everything works just like you expect. Cool. Any questions about that? So I'll push out a branch of this. Git checkout v3-9, git commit -m9, git push origin v3-9. Cool.
Can you go back to your search, please?
Yeah. So this right here, this is the like unexplored, or the not the unexplored, but the dangerous part. So the ability to add properties like this onto your ES6 classes is not standard yet, but it is coming. And so what our friend over here was talking about, why this actually works, whereas it didn't before, is that yeah, that is it. Is that arrow functions do not create new contexts when they're created, right? So if I create an arrow function, it does not create a new context. So why that's important is if I say, or if I call render, right? Render, whenever it's called, creates a new context wherever it is. So in this particular case, it's called within search, so this refers to search, right? But if I pull render out of it and call it in a different context, it'll create a new context there. The difference with arrow functions is this will never create a new context, so it's always just going to refer to search, right? So semantically, it's similar to binding the function. So if I call like dot bind this, right, in whatever context I want it to be bound, it's semantically similar to it. The only difference is that when you bind the context, you're actually like melding the context together, right? Whereas with an arrow function, you just never create a new context. And then state here, we're just setting the default state, which is going to be search term. Something that people often ask me is, why do we not have prop types for state? Well, we don't need one, right? Because search term is always just going to be string, right? So it kind of is implicitly typed here. Questions?
Does the state variable have to be state, named state?
Yeah. Yep. Good question. That has to be named state.
I don't know if you want to take a peek at the chat room.
Did someone figure out what I'm doing wrong?
It's sort of like the last 10 messages. I don't really even know what to ask there.
Yeah, so people are saying that it failed to compile. That's not entirely true. Oops. So whenever Webpack has a problem with any of its loaders, right? So in this particular case, we have the ESLint loader. It says that it's a failed to compile. It's not actually super true. it actually will still compile even if the ESLint fails, right? So that's why we're still able to see our changes despite the fact that it says failed to compile. It's still compiled, I promise, right? Now, if Babel fails, then it actually will fail to compile and nothing will change. But the thing is here, it won't auto-reload when it fails to compile, so that's something to keep in mind. And I'll just have to figure out here in a second why ESLint decided that it doesn't like me anymore. It's got to be something with our ESLint.json. Let's see, I'm sure I have it here in the complete intro to React, ESLint.json. Parser, that's it. Found it. Okay, everyone go to your ESLint.json and just put parser equals, or parser is babel-ESLint. So this means it'll use the parser from Babel so that it can understand everything that Babel can understand. So line 10 there, that's what I'm pointing at. Okay, so now, hopefully, if we come back here and start and stop our dev server again, it'll stop yelling at us. Please. Yes. Nailed it.
So it's Babel ESLint.
Yeah, let me pull it up here. You just gotta tell it which parser to use, because otherwise it won't run it through Babel. Something else I wanted to talk about with search.jsx. Someone asked in chat that I saw, what happens to the parentheses here? I just mentioned earlier, but I'll mention it again. As soon as I save it, those parentheses are going to go away. If you have exactly one parameter, it is optional to have parentheses, and Prettier will drop them. So I typically would put them on. That's what standard required, and I was used to writing standard, but Prettier drops them. So that's fine. And let's talk about event right here, and what is event. So I'm sure most of you are used to seeing event.target.value, right? Yeah, that's a very common way of interacting with the DOM and with DOM events. You can also put current target there, right? Either one of those works. It's safe enough to say target.value with the way that React works. So this is semantically totally similar to a DOM event, right? You can actually never know that this is not really a DOM event. It's technically a synthetic React event, and the only reason that it's done this way is it's a little bit more performant, and React can get a little bit more speed off of doing its own event system rather than letting the DOM do it. So the only reason I mention that is if you ever call like type of on it or anything like that, it might scare you. But it's totally similar. Like you can use the MDM docs. Like the API for this event is exactly the same as the one that MDN has. So it's a totally normal event other than the fact that it's not event. And yeah, any questions about that? So this is the way that we'll be doing both state and handle search term change from now on. I don't think we'll ever use the constructor again, just because it's kind of burdensome, and I think this is a little bit more succinct. So I would invite you to do it this way. This is a very common way of writing React. But again, it's always up to you to make your own trade-offs.